CICE.com.
And welcome back to Coast to Coast. John Lott with us, and your phone calls this hour. John has made himself available for us this hour. Thank you again for that, John. I appreciate that. I know it's late. You're in Chicago still, aren't you?
I'm actually in Montana right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I know I have a few things to do early in the morning, but it's worth the show.
John, in terms of concealed carry, what is the ratio between male, female concealed carry permit holders?
About 27% of permit holders are women. It's grown dramatically over the last decade. The growth rate for women has been about a little bit over 100% faster than for men. And there's also been a big growth in minorities. Blacks, the rate of permits for blacks has grown about 20% faster than for whites. And I think that's great, because I think the people who need them the most are moving to get more of them. You can really see the difference across states. It has to do, so let me give you an example. If you look at Indiana and Illinois, Indiana, about 18% of the adult population has a concealed carry permit. In Illinois, it's about 3%. And there's a pretty simple reason for the difference, and that is just the cost of getting a permit. In Indiana now, it's $0, literally, is the total cost for getting a concealed carry permit.
Well, and it was not legal for years in Illinois, right?
Right, yeah. Illinois was the last state to adopt it. But it costs about $450 to go through the process. The concealed carry permit. So, it's a lot more costly. Fewer people get it. But you also see a huge difference in the mix of people who get it. Basically, the types of people who go and get a concealed carry permit in Illinois are wealthy whites who live in the suburbs. My research is, if it convinces me of anything, the people who have the most trouble getting are the ones who are most likely victims of violent crime. And those overwhelmingly poor blacks who live in the city. It's like in Illinois, they kind of went through and did everything they could to stop poor minorities from getting permits. So, for example, there's no training facilities in Chicago. It's against the law to even take a permitted concealed handgun on public transportation. So if you're a poor black who lives in Chicago, even if you can't afford to pay the $400 or $450 to go through the entire process to get a concealed carry permit, if you don't already own a car, you're going to have to go and borrow somebody's car and have to borrow it for at least 2 different days, because the amount of training requirements, 60 hours that you have to go through. And the irony is that the states that tend to be controlled by Democrats make it very hard for minorities to go and get permits.
Yeah, they did everything they could to get minorities from getting concealed carry permits, didn't they?
Right. I mean, one interesting example in Los Angeles County, I was able to get the records a few years ago of everybody who was given a concealed carry permit. First of all, very few people. I mean, they had many adults in Los Angeles County, and you just had like 214 concealed carry permits that were issued, which is amazingly small.
That is right.
But if you look, while women make up 27% of permits nationwide, they only make up 7% of permits in Los Angeles County. Blacks nationwide make up about 14% of permits, but in Los Angeles County it's just over 6%. And Hispanics, well, 54% of the population in Los Angeles County is Hispanic. Only 6% of the permit holders are Hispanic. So basically, you have these politicians who claim that they care about women, that they care about minorities, that they care about poor people. But the people that they give permit to are basically wealthy white males who are incredibly connected politically. which is fine. I'm glad those people are concerned about their safety. But the people who would benefit the most, they're not willing to go
Now, they have priced out.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to Walter in Pennsylvania. Welcome to the show. Hey, Walt, go ahead.
George, I want to thank Mr. Lott for staying up late with us. My hat is off to him, and also, George, needless to say, Mark Walters is also a great guest that you have on George, we talk on this show sometimes, paranormal, we speak about deja vu. George, is it my imagination, or did not Hillary Clinton say back in 2016 that if Donald Trump stole the election from her, that this country would experience no peace? And George, isn't this exactly what we have? George, I think this is what we have with these protests, and so long as this is just a continuation of the coup d'etat, I think that the Clintons are in cahoots with George Soros, and this is nothing short of a Bolshevik revolution, George, going on in this country today, George.
John, a lot of people feel this way. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I guess it's kind of outside my area of expertise. But, I'll just say there's a lot at stake in this election. I don't think, at least in terms of the areas that I'm an expert in terms of people being able to go and defend themselves, I don't think, and I know this is an often used term, but I honestly don't believe that there's a more important election. The parties are so polarized on this issue, and if the Democrats win the presidency and you have somebody like Bill O'Rourke as the guns control czar, just to remind people, Joe Biden was in charge of gun control policies during the Obama administration.
But they really didn't levy many controls, did they?
Well, they certainly tried to pass stuff, and when they tried to pass it, it was hard. You had the Republicans controlling the House, and they weren't going to go and pass those types of bills. But, tell me what gun control laws Biden won't support.
Well, I probably would support everything that's thrown his way. As long as it's controlled.
I listened to the Democratic presidential debates that were going on, and, you had maybe a couple candidates who weren't as strong as the other ones in terms of pushing for more gun control, but they didn't last very long in the race. And I think the courts are going to be the main battleground here.
I think you're right.
And it's interesting. All the Democratic judges pretty much go in lockstep on these issues, and the Republican judges, except for Roberts, go in a very different direction.
And if the polls are correct, Biden's ahead by about 15%. If the polls are correct, does that mean that the majority of the people who are opposed to guns are supporting Biden?
It means he's getting obviously some votes of people who are in favor of private gun ownership, that they may think other issues are more important.
Or they may not know what Biden's views are.
I don't think the media's gone into it and been particularly, detailed in terms of his positions on things. I'll say this much as an economist, because that's my training, I personally think that if you increase things like the corporate income tax rate back up to the highest in the world and stuff, we're going to have some real problems with the economy in the long run. We're not going to have the type of boom that we were having during the first 3 years of the Trump administration.
That's for sure.
These are types of issues that I think concern people outside of gun ownership, but I think you're going to determine who's on the court, particularly the Supreme Court. The next couple things are going to be there. It's going to determine the future of gun control in the country.
Let's go to Gordon at Plant City, Florida. Welcome to the program. Hi, Gordy.
Hey, Dr. Lott, I'm a fellow Seminole, so I just wanted to give a shout out. Now, I'm going to ask you the toughest question you've probably ever heard, but here goes nothing. I want to ask, why is it that you suppose that the conservatives support the actual Second Amendment, which is in the amendments, but the liberals are the ones that support the economic Second Amendment, which is bankruptcy equality? Now, bankruptcy is not available for college students, but both the gun Second Amendment and the regular Second Amendment are self-defense mechanisms, and the lack of bankruptcy is what allowed the predatory lending, loan sharking, price gouging, tuition inflation, and other abuses, which will crash the dollar. So my two questions to you are, number one, why is it that the economic Second Amendment is supported mainly by liberals when it's really our issue? Because the Uniformity Clause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4, is in the articles, not the amendments. Why do you suppose that there's such a disparity? And the second question is, where do you stand on the economic Second Amendment? Bankruptcy. I'm not asking for a free handout, but if Trump can get bankruptcy, why can't a college student for millions repeatedly?
Another issue, Gordon. You know that.
I had to.
I guess I think it's relatively easy for people to get bankruptcy, and there's real.
Why is it that the economic Second Amendment is supported mainly by liberals when it's really our issue? Because the Uniformity Clause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4, is in the articles, not the amendments. Why do you suppose that there's such a disparity? And the second question is, where do you stand on the economic Second Amendment? Bankruptcy. I'm not asking for a free handout, but if Trump can get bankruptcy, why can't a college student?
Well, that's another issue, Gordon. You know that. Go ahead, John.
I guess I think it's relatively easy for people to get bankruptcy, and I think there's real cost to making it too easy for people to get bankruptcy. If you're talking about student loans, which are guaranteed by the government, if there are difficulties with regard to that, I mean, that's different than a lot of other things. But I don't think that there's a real problem in terms of wanting to have bankruptcy be a lot easier. I think that makes it, if bankruptcy gets easy, then the people who won't go bankrupt have to pay higher interest rates because it makes it riskier for people to go and lend you money because you're more likely to default. And so you're looking at one side of the equation. You're saying, well, it's great that I can go and repudiate the loans that I have. But you have to look at all the people now who are going to be borrowing and have to pay higher interest rates because the lenders are going to take greater risk.
Let's go to first-time caller, Devon in Bakersfield, California. Hi, Devon. Thanks for calling.
Hi, George. First of all, I wanted to say that my dad was a chief petty officer and fire controlman on the USS Oriskany, so I wanted to thank you.